In today's video, I'm going to be counting down 5 players who I think will be traded before 2019. Starting off this list is the obvious one, and I think he's going to be traded even before the 2018-2019 season starts, and that is franchise defenseman for the Ottawa Senators, Erik Karlsson. He's 28 years old, he's played in 627 career games, and has 518 total points, and as a defenseman, those are some very impressive stats, and the Ottawa Senators really have to be careful with what they get in return for Erik Karlsson, because this is a generational defenseman. He's a franchise changer, and we're never going to see a guy, in my opinion, like Erik Karlsson in a long time, and he's still very much so in his prime, and he is a very, very solid player above that, and he can really turn your team around or take your team over the edge and make you a Stanley Cup favorite. And the Ottawa Senators really are just kind of a burning fire at this point, and I think Erik Karlsson deserves better than what the Ottawa Senators organization has been like and how they've been treating him over the past year. He's played in 48 playoff games and has 37 total points, and in this past season he only played in 71 games but still had 62 total points, in which was seen as a down year for Erik Karlsson, and that's some still pretty impressive stats. It was just an all-around bad year, a lot of things happening in the personal life of Erik Karlsson, a lot of just bad things overall happening in the Senators organization, so I'll be very happy for Erik Karlsson if he's traded to a contending team where I think he belongs, and I definitely think we will see Erik Karlsson in a new uniform heading into next season. Next up is Vancouver Canucks defenseman Chris Tanev. Now this is a guy whose name has always been linked to trade talks over the past year, but it has kind of cooled off of late. But in my opinion, I think a lot of contending teams and teams that are just in need of a solid top 4 defenseman should be targeting this guy. He's 28 years old, he's in his prime, he's played in 390 games and has 18 goals and 68 assists for 86 points. He's not known as an offensive defenseman, he's just a really solid defenseman to help out that back end. He's played in 16 playoff games, only has 3 points, but in this previous season with the Vancouver Canucks, he played in 42 games and had 11 points, and was a plus player for a very bad Vancouver Canucks team. So in my opinion, that is a pretty impressive stat, and it shows you how reliable he is on the back end. And this is a guy I've wanted Toronto to go after for a long time, just because I think he'd be a perfect addition to the top 4 of a team that really has been criticized for having a bad blue line. And the Detroit Red Wings, my favorite team, I'd also like them to maybe try and go and get him, because even though we're not a contending team, we still have a really bad defense core, and he's a guy who could come in just to stabilize that and really just bring some grit and just some stability to your blue line. So I think Chris Tanev would benefit a lot of teams, and I don't really think you'd have to give up all that much to get him, so that's why I think he's a prime trade target if you're looking for a defenseman, and I think we'll see him in a new uniform by 2019. Next up is Mike Green of the Detroit Red Wings. They just signed him to a 2-year contract, and I think a team wouldn't be opposed to bringing on a 32-year-old for just 2 more years, because he still does put up some very solid numbers. Now, Mike Green does have a no-trade clause until 2020, but I think if he were to get in the right position, and if things weren't going so well in Detroit, remember he's towards the end of his career, and I think he'd want to go to a contending team, so I think we could see Mike Green waive his no-trade clause, and in 2020 that does become a modified no-trade clause where he can submit a 10-team list, and I think that definitely could happen. So obviously if he does wait until then, it will be after 2019, but I definitely think in the coming years Mike Green will be the center of trade talks, because he is still a really good, solid top 4 defenseman in my opinion. He put up really good numbers last year for the Detroit Red Wings. He was their only All-Star with 33 points in 66 games in his career, 787 games and 464 points, and those are some very good numbers. Obviously, he's not the player he once was when he played for the Washington Capitals, but in my opinion, he could still help out a lot of teams that are in need of a right-handed shot on their blue line, and I definitely think he will be in talks about trades up until 2020. Next up is Montreal Canadiens captain Max Pacioretty. Now over the past couple of days, these rumors about Pacioretty have really heated up when Marc Bergevin said he will not talk contract extensions with his captain, and he will look to trade him out as soon as possible. So we definitely could see Max Pacioretty in a new uniform as soon as opening night, and I definitely think that would be good for him, as in my opinion he's another guy who deserves to be in a better situation. Montreal, like Ottawa, isn't really in a very good position. Now Max Pacioretty, very much so in his prime at 29 years old. He's played in 626 career games and has 448 total points. 38 playoff games, a total of 19 points, and this past season was kind of a down year for Pacioretty. Even though he only played in 64 games, still 37 points. Usually he has that up to around 50, but still a very good goal scorer who I think is still capable of 30 to 35 goals, and he could really help out a team like the Edmonton Oilers or like the Florida Panthers. And if I do see Max Pacioretty getting traded, I could see him going to Florida or Edmonton, and I think if you were to trade him to Florida, you could package together a deal that would get you Nick Bjugstad in return, and I think he'd be a pretty solid center to add to the Canadiens lineup since they don't really have much good center depth. So Max Pacioretty, I think we'll definitely see him playing for a new team on opening night. And lastly, we have, of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Artemi Panarin. Now this guy, in my opinion, should still be a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. I never think they should have traded him. He's 26 years old and a fantastic player who I think you can build your franchise around. He's played in 243 games and has 233 total points. So with those stats, you can definitely see how good of an offensive player this guy is. And in 17 playoff games, he has 15 points. So he definitely doesn't shy away from the moment. And we've seen that in playoff games with the Blue Jackets this year with his overtime goal against the Washington Capitals. He played in 81 games last year and had 82 total points. Very good numbers from Artemi Panarin. And the situation with Panarin is kind of confusing as his agent is seeming to be talking too much. He always comes out and says that Artemi Panarin isn't interested in a contract and then says that he'll listen to one, and then the owner and GM of Columbus says they're going to try to talk it out or they're going to try and trade him, and it's really just a confusing situation. And if I'm Artemi Panarin, I really wouldn't be happy with that, because as a 26-year-old and what you're doing for this franchise, you'd think they'd treat you with a little bit more respect and kind of value your services more. So I definitely think we could see Artemi Panarin in a new uniform come 2019, and this would have to be a huge trade because I really think Panarin is way better than Brendan Saad, and when I seen that trade from Chicago to Columbus, I was very surprised, and I definitely think if Panarin is traded again, it will be in a much bigger deal this time around. So that is going to wrap up this video. I really hope you guys did enjoy, and make sure to let me know down in the comment section who are some players that you think will be traded before 2019, and what you think some of the trades could look like if any players from this list do get moved. So with that being said, I really hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.